First, I saw the lights, red and blue, then the sirens. My mom ran to the door. My dad froze in the yard. And at that moment, I knew. I would never forget this. Malik Carter was only 8 years old. He knew what it meant to be a kid, running, laughing, eating his mom's cookies. But that night, he learned a harsh truth. Justice wasn't the same for everyone. His father, Darnell Carter, had just returned home from a long shift at work. He stepped out of his car, carrying grocery bags, exhaustion etched across his face. But before he could take another step, 2 police cruisers swerved in front of him, cutting him off. "Hands on your head!" 2 white police officers, Officer Sullivan and Officer Tate, sprang from their vehicles, moving toward him with purpose. Darnell took a startled step back. "Is there a problem, officer?" "I was just heading home." But Sullivan wasn't listening. He tilted his head, his hand casually resting near his holstered gun. "Cooperate with us, Mr. Carter. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Malik stood frozen behind the upstairs window, his small hands gripping the curtain. His heart pounded against his chest. Below him, his mother, Aisha, burst through the front door. "What are you doing? My husband didn't do anything." Tate turned his smug gaze toward her. "Ma'am, go back inside, or we'll have to take you in too." And just like that, it was over. Cold metal snapped around Darnell's wrists. His face was pressed against the hood of the police car. From above, Malik saw something in his father's expression that he had never seen before. Fear. And in that moment he realized this wasn't a mistake. When Malik woke up the next morning, his father was still not home. He shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his sleepy eyes, only to hear his mother, Aisha, speaking urgently into the phone. "What do you mean there's no record? You took my husband in the middle of the night. I need to see him." The officer on the other end spoke in an indifferent tone. "Ma'am, Mr. Carter has been charged with a crime. Standard procedures are being followed." Aisha slammed the phone down, her eyes burning with frustration. Malik's small hands clenched into fists. He knew one thing for certain. His father hadn't done anything wrong. But the scariest part? Someone was trying to make him look guilty. Later that day, he and his mother went to the police station. The officers behind the desk barely acknowledged them. "Your father is currently being questioned. You can't see him." "Questioned? For what?" Aisha snapped. The officer shrugged, his expression bored. "Theft and assault. We have a witness statement." Malik's chest tightened. Theft. Assault. His father would never do that. But then, Malik remembered something. The previous night, just before his father was taken, he had seen one of the officers place a bag inside his father's car. It was planted evidence. But he was just a kid. Who would believe him? That night, a dark car pulled up in front of their house. The window slowly rolled down. Inside, Officer Sullivan sat motionless, his cold eyes locked onto Malik. "Little man, sometimes it's best to forget what you saw." Malik's breath hitched. He bolted inside the house, his heart pounding. This was a warning, and that night, he realized, if he wanted to save his father, he had to act. Malik locks himself in his room, heart racing. He grabs a piece of paper and a pen, writing down every detail he remembers, because he refuses to let them win. Malik couldn't sleep that night. He had seen it with his own eyes. One of the officers had placed a mysterious bag inside his father's car. If that bag hadn't been there, they wouldn't have had any reason to arrest him. But no one would believe him, because he was just a child. Still, Malik refused to give up. There had to be a way. His mother, Aisha, thought his silence was fear. But in reality, Malik wasn't just scared. He was planning. That morning, Aisha decided to contact a lawyer, Lisa Thompson, one of the toughest attorneys in the city, known for exposing police corruption. If anyone could help, it was her. Lisa listened intently as Malik recounted what he had seen. "I've met a lot of brave people in my time, Malik. But you might be the bravest. Now we just need one thing. Proof." Malik thought hard. He had seen them plant the bag. There had to be someone else who had seen it too. Lisa had an idea. She went to the small grocery store at the corner of the neighborhood and asked about security cameras. The store clerk sighed. The footage was erased, because someone wanted it gone. But then, a young employee hesitated before speaking. In a hushed voice, he admitted, "I made a backup copy, just in case." Lisa and Malik watched the footage in silence. And there it was, Officer Sullivan, casually slipping a bag into Darnell's car before the arrest. Lisa, holding the undeniable evidence, marches toward the police station. Behind her, Malik watches, his eyes filled with hope. This time, They might actually have a chance to save his father. The day of the trial arrived, and the courthouse was swarming with reporters. The entire city was talking about the young boy who was about to stand against the police. Inside the courtroom, all eyes were on Lisa and Malik. Across the room, Darnell sat in the defendant's chair, his wrists shackled. His face was exhausted, but when he looked at his son, a glimmer of hope sparked in his eyes. The judge struck the gavel. "Prosecution, you may call your witnesses." The prosecutor smirked, shaking his head. "Your Honor, the witness is just a child. Surely we can agree that his memory might not be reliable." Lisa remained calm, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Your Honor, we weren't there that night. Malik was. Let's hear what he has to say." A heavy silence settled over the courtroom, a child on the witness stand. But his words were about to shake the entire system. The judge leaned forward. "Malik, can you tell us what you saw that night?" Malik's throat felt dry, but when he looked into his father's eyes, he found his courage. "My dad didn't do anything." Silence. Malik swallowed hard, his small hands gripping the edge of his seat. "That night, the police put a bag in his car. I saw it. I saw the fear on my dad's face. I heard my mom scream. But most of all, I saw the police officer's smile." A murmur spread through the courtroom. The prosecutor shot up from his chair. "Your Honor, this is just a child's imagination." But Lisa was ready for this. "Oh, really? Then let's take a look at the facts." She turned to the courtroom technician, who hit play on the security footage. The entire courtroom froze. On the large screen, Officer Sullivan was seen discreetly placing a bag into Darnell's car before the arrest. The defense attorneys fell silent. Sullivan's face went pale. The judge took a deep breath. The courtroom was eerily quiet. The verdict was near. The courtroom was silent, everyone holding their breath. The judge skimmed through the files one last time. Just minutes ago, people had doubted the words of a small child. But now, the security footage looping on the big screen had unveiled a truth that would shake the entire city. Officer Sullivan had been caught planting false evidence. The defense attorneys struggled to find words, while Sullivan's face drained of all color. His eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape. But there was no way out. The judge lifted his gavel and delivered the verdict. All charges against Darnell Carter were dropped. Officer Sullivan and Officer Tate were arrested for planting false evidence and perjury. An independent investigation into the Metropolitan Police Department was ordered. For a moment, the room remained frozen in silence. Then, the sound of metal clicking filled the air. Darnell's handcuffs were removed. He turned to his son, his eyes glistening. Before anyone could react, Malik sprinted towards his father, throwing his arms around him. Darnell held his son tight, breathing in the moment he thought he might never have again. "My brave boy," he whispered. From a few steps away, Lisa watched them, a small smile on her lips. They hadn't just won. Justice had won. As they stepped outside, a swarm of reporters rushed toward them. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved forward. One reporter leaned in, holding a mic toward Malik. "Malik, how did you find the courage to do this?" The young boy lifted his gaze, looking directly at the cameras. He wasn't afraid anymore. "Because my dad always told me, justice is for everyone." Malik, his father, and his mother walked down the courthouse steps, bathed in the golden glow of the sun. In the background, Sullivan and Tate were led into police vehicles. Their heads hung low. But Malik looked up. The truth cannot be silenced. Malik Carter became an inspiration for a generation.